7 years into their marriage, Julian was on the cusp of inheriting $2 billion. But as he sat across the mahogany table from Mark, the family attorney, signing what he thought were routine succession documents, everything unraveled. "I'm afraid there's been a complication," Mark said, lifting his eyes from the file. "According to official records, Ms. Mariner is legally married to a Mr. Silas Pierce. As far as the state is concerned, you, Mr. Hale, are single." Julian blinked. "That's impossible," he said, though his voice wavered. Mark closed the file with a quiet finality. "What you and Celeste had, what the entire city of Riverfall celebrated, was never a legal marriage. There was no marriage license filed. It was a ceremony, yes. Lavish, public, unforgettable, but legally? It meant nothing." He hesitated before adding, "The actual marriage certificate was signed by Celeste and Silas Pierce the day after your so-called wedding." Julian's throat constricted. He let out a brittle laugh, equal parts disbelief and pain. "So I was never her husband. Just a well-dressed pawn in her pageant." Everyone in Riverfall had seen their wedding as a fairy tale. Celeste had paraded him like a prized jewel, promising under 1,000 fairy lights and rose petals, "I will never forsake Julian." He'd believed her. Everyone had. He stood there for a long moment, quietly absorbing the truth, letting it settle like dust on a grave. Then, as if timed by fate, his phone buzzed. "Julian, I got you the newest laptop model you love. Flight just landed. I'll swing by the office, then head straight home to you. I love you. Celeste." Her text chirped like nothing had happened. Like she wasn't someone else's wife. Julian was already at the airport when he read it, waiting in his car outside the terminal. Through the glass doors, he spotted her, flawless as ever in a beige trench coat, slipping her phone into her pocket. Then Silas appeared beside her. Without hesitation, he pulled her into a kiss, full and possessive. She melted into it like she belonged there. Julian's hands curled into fists. His eyes stung. So this was love, Celeste style, telling him, "I love you," in a text while letting another man devour her mouth on the curb. As he watched her, memory hit him like a wave to the chest. They'd grown up together. In middle school, when his parents planned to move the family to Australia, Celeste had knelt outside his house for 7 straight days, pleading through tears for him to stay. On the last day, moments before she collapsed from exhaustion, she clutched his hand and gasped, "You can't leave. You're mine, this lifetime, you're mine. I won't let you go that far away." And so he didn't. In high school, it became a known fact, Julian was Celeste's everything. Her golden boy. No one questioned it. Then came college. Her parents had dreams of Oxford for her, but she turned them down and stayed with him in Northbridge City. "Where Julian goes, I go," she'd said, wrapping her arms around him. "The second we graduate, we'll have our wedding. We'll be together forever." And now, forever was a lie. So was the wedding. So was she. Yes, they had held that unforgettable wedding at 22. But never, never, had Julian imagined that the woman who once swore she loved him more than life itself had calculated every step of their marriage like a business merger. He'd trusted her so deeply that on their wedding night, exhausted and glowing, he hadn't questioned when she told him she'd handle the final paperwork with the minister herself. He thought she was being considerate, taking the burden off his shoulders. He thought she was tired. But the truth? The truth was, that signature, that moment of legal binding, she'd signed it with another man. Celeste. The girl who'd known him since birth. The woman who had never left his side for 27 straight years. The only person he had ever imagined forever with. And still, she married someone else behind his back. She had occupied every inch of his life. Every birthday. Every heartbreak. Every hope. And now Julian made a decision that would tear him in half if it had to. He would cut her out of his future completely. Not a trace of her would remain. Instead of returning home, Julian drove straight to Mark's office. The inheritance transfer was swift. Every last penny of the Westcott estate was now in his name, including the shares of Mariner holdings Celeste had gifted him just before their wedding. Mark hesitated as he reviewed the updated portfolio. "Mr. Hale, are you absolutely sure you want to sell all Westcott family assets?" Julian didn't blink. "Yes. Every single property and holding in Riverfall. I don't want a cent of it left behind." In just a few hours, he signed contracts that liquidated nearly half the estate. The remaining buyers, mostly out-of-town investors, had already been vetted. Though they couldn't arrive immediately, they'd confirmed funding and were expected to close within days. 7 days, max, Mark said. "And it will all be gone." Julian nodded. That was all he needed. "Celeste, everything you did, every lie, every wound, will be buried along with this legacy." 7 days. That's all it takes to burn down a lifetime. 3 hours later, Julian returned to the home they'd once called theirs. Celeste stood by the window, her soft amber eyes latching onto him the second he stepped inside. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "Your phone was off." "I waited for 2 hours, Julian." 2 hours. Do you even know how worried I was?" Julian looked at her, but not the way he used to. All he could see was the image from the airport, her hand curled around Silas's waist, Silas bending down to kiss her like he had every right to. Once, Julian had loved kissing her more than anything. Now? The thought made his skin crawl. Celeste stepped closer. "Julian, you know I hate it when you disappear without telling me where you're going. Are you still punishing me for before? Is that what this is about?" Without waiting for an answer, she slipped her arms around his waist. Julian didn't move. His body locked in place, eyes dark and unreadable. Where once he would have melted into her scent, the soft sweetness of gardenia that used to bring him peace, all he sensed now was danger. He knew her too well. Knew her possessiveness. Knew her entitlement. Knew how she had always wrapped her control in the language of love. And now he knew something else too. It had never really been love at all. He was 20 the year he had that fight with her. Stormed off with a group of classmates to go hiking in the mountains, hoping a few days in the wilderness might clear his head. Celeste didn't take it well. In a panic, she mobilized every helicopter in the city, scouring every peak, every ridge, until she found him. And when she did, the very first thing she did wasn't to hug him, or cry, or yell. She ordered her bodyguards to lock him in her penthouse. He stayed there for a month. A full 30 days. Every day, she came to him. Demanding. Needing. Possessing. And when he tried to pull away, Celeste would break, crying, pleading, clinging to him with all the desperation in the world. It crushed his heart every single time. Eventually, he caved. Again and again. Swore he'd never disappear like that again. Never leave her wondering. Never make her feel abandoned. After that, he grew afraid of pushing her too far. He learned the rule, no matter how angry they got, no matter how lost he felt, he couldn't vanish on her again. That was the price of keeping the peace. Now, in the present, she tilted her chin, looking up at him with that same velvet sweetness, the same pout that once made him surrender everything. "Say something," she whispered playfully. "Or do I need to punish you for real?" As she spoke, her slender fingers trailed to the buckle of his belt. Julian's eyes darkened. If she found out he was preparing to walk away for good, she'd lose her mind. And he knew exactly what kind of destruction she was capable of when cornered. He couldn't afford to set off alarms just yet. Quietly, carefully, he replied, "I went to the hospital." It wasn't a lie. His health had been deteriorating for years. His kidneys were weak. And for all 7 years of their so-called marriage, he'd tried, desperately, to have a child with her. He'd seen specialists across the country, choke down every bitter herbal remedy and every modern prescription money could buy. None of it worked. Celeste's expression shifted the moment she heard the word hospital. Her golden brown eyes shimmered with something fragile. She rose on tiptoe and kissed the corner of his mouth, her voice soft and aching. I know you still want us to have a baby. I do too. But it's been years, Julian. Not even once, not even a scare. She cupped his face, brushing her lips against his again. But it's okay, she murmured. You're enough. Just having you, only you, my life already feels complete. No more hospitals, okay? I don't want to watch you go through any more pain. Julian said nothing. His throat burned. She made it sound like devotion, like sacrifice, but all he could feel was the weight of failure, and the gnawing knowledge that no matter how much he gave, she always held something back. A moment later, her phone buzzed. He watched her glance at the screen. Her lips curved into a smile, not the smile she gave him. This one had a secret tucked inside it. And just like that, she was elsewhere. Baby, she said airily, turning back to him with a kiss on the forehead. No more talk about kids, all right? You're my everything. That's all that matters. So stay home, okay? Don't go running around and making me worry. I mean it. If you do, I'll be really upset. She didn't wait for a response. She was already halfway out the door, keys in hand, heels clicking, her scent still lingering in the air long after she vanished. Julian let out a bitter laugh. So that was it? She'd come home just to make sure he hadn't gone anywhere? To check that her little puppet was still in place? Outside, someone else was waiting for her, probably the same man who had kissed her at the airport. And she'd only made a pit stop at home, offering sweet lies and soft kisses like she still owned his soul. God, how many years had he let her own him? 30 minutes later, his phone buzzed again, this time, a voice message from an unknown number. He hit play. Celeste, are you really pregnant with Silas's child? A woman's voice, he didn't recognize it at first. Yeah. 3 months, came Celeste's calm, almost nonchalant reply. Julian can't have children. But my family needs an heir. Eleanor's been breathing down my neck about it. Julian froze. The blood drained from his face. You insisted on marrying Julian, the woman pressed. And that's when Eleanor made you drug him, made sure he'd never be able to have kids. And she wouldn't allow you two to actually register the marriage either. So what now? You always said Julian was the love of your life. Her voice clicked into place. Laura. Celeste's old friend. Julian's ears were ringing. Drugged? What drug? No, this had to be wrong. But then, he remembered. That night. Their wedding night. Celeste had brought him a bowl of warm, dark liquid. It's a fertility tonic, she'd said, smiling sweetly. Passed down from the older women in my family. If we drink it on our wedding night, it guarantees a baby. Drink up. And after this, you'd better be ready to perform. His ears had flushed red at the time, more from her teasing than the taste of the medicine. She'd spooned every drop into his mouth, watching him with stars in her eyes. And all this time, she never intended to have a child with him. She never even intended to be his wife. Julian's hands shook. His stomach twisted with something worse than betrayal. Worse than heartbreak. Of course I love Julian, Celeste's voice floated on, gentle and unapologetic. But getting pregnant by Silas, it was the only way to appease Eleanor. If I didn't, she would have forced me to end things with Julian completely. I already gave up the family feud. I already gave up everything for him. I gave him Mariner Holdings. Everything I could, except a child. Except a real marriage. But what about Silas? Laura asked. Is he really just a tool for your family's bloodline? There was a pause. Then Celeste spoke. Silas is calm. Like still water. When I'm with him, I feel at peace. It's a quiet kind of safety. That's something Julian never gave me. Julian's vision blurred. The pain in his chest felt like someone had driven a knife between his ribs and twisted. So that's it? Laura sighed. One man for the heart, one for the home. You really do want them both. Julian couldn't listen to another word. He slammed the phone face down on the table. His eyes were red, burning. Peace. That was what Celeste said he'd never given her. Not love. Not loyalty. Not years of devotion. Not the aching hours in waiting rooms. Not the hundreds of pills. Not the dreams he killed in himself to make room for hers. None of it gave her peace. She had made him believe his body was broken. That the shame was his. And all along, she had taken that choice from him, like everything else. After a long, hollow silence, Julian picked up his phone and made a call. Dr. Lila? Is there any chance your hospital can add a surgery to tomorrow morning's schedule? Depends on the department, she replied. I can speak with the chief surgeon. What kind of procedure are we talking about? Julian's voice was flat, cold. Urology. The night before, after Celeste left, she sent only one message. I'm not coming home tonight. Had too much to drink. I'll head straight to work in the morning, see you tonight. But she hadn't gone to work. Because when Julian arrived at the hospital to finalize his surgical prep, he saw her. Celeste. In the maternity wing. Wrapped around Silas Pierce's waist like he was the center of her world. Julian stood frozen behind a crowd of patients, his long coat and hat shielding his face. He watched as Celeste leaned her head gently against Silas's shoulder. Silas's hand was placed protectively over her back, guiding her away from the bustle toward a quieter corner. Julian's stomach twisted. That used to be him. The way Silas looked at her now, with quiet admiration, with softness, he had looked at her the same way, once. Silas bent slightly and whispered, "Don't be nervous. Everyone here's pregnant, just relax." Celeste pouted, playfully whining, "I told you we should have gone to a private clinic. Why do you insist on coming to a public hospital? What's even good about this place?" Silas's gaze turned gentle, but there was an unmistakable shadow behind his smile. "I'm the son of a housekeeper, Celeste. Just a regular guy. I can't compare to you, or to Mr. Westcott. Public hospitals cost less. I don't want to waste your money. But you're carrying my child now. So I'll do everything I can to give you and the baby the best I can afford." Celeste's expression softened, visibly moved. "Julian always gave me the most expensive, the most exclusive things. A single handbag he bought me could cover 10 years of your salary. But Julian never understood me the way you do." She rose on tiptoe and kissed Silas on the cheek. Across the hallway, Julian stood rigid, breath shallow beneath his mask. Understood her? What a joke. She had transferred her shares of Mariner Holdings to him just days before their wedding. And Julian, God, the things he'd said. "I'll only buy you the best, Celeste," he'd whispered. "The newest, the rarest. You're my princess, and you should be kept like one." He'd meant every word. He would have torn down the world for her comfort. And now? Now he listened as she handed their past away like a hand-me-down. "Linden Court Estate, it used to be my parents' place," she told Silas, voice tender. "You'll live there from now on. And that green diamond from the auction? I had it set into a ring. Consider it your wedding band." Julian's vision blurred. That house. That ring. He had once imagined them for their future. And now she was giving them away, along with pieces of the life he thought was real. He turned, his body heavy, his heart splintered, and walked away, silently, invisibly, leaving behind the woman who had rewritten their story without him. That green diamond, so rare, so vivid, it had come from an exclusive auction. It was Julian who first told Celeste the legend. Green diamonds symbolize the one and only. And that was the stone he'd chosen for her wedding ring. That was their story. Their promise. And now? She was giving that symbol to another man. Did Mr. Westcott like the computer I picked out for him? Silas asked gently. Of course, Celeste smiled, her eyes soft. You spent 3 hours choosing it. He'll love it. Silas rested a hand against her belly, his voice hushed, uncertain, pleading. Celeste. Mr. Westcott's going to be my child's adoptive father. I just want him to like me. I'll try hard to stay in his good graces, I promise. Celeste's face twisted with emotion. She reached for his hand. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for being willing to give Julian the baby. Only if the child becomes Julian's will they be the rightful heir to Mariner Holdings. Everything I have, everything I am, belongs to this child. Julian stood just beyond the crowd, the words slicing into him like glass. So that's what this is? She got pregnant with another man's child to give him a baby? Because he'd wanted one so badly? Because he'd begged, pleaded, ached for a family of their own? Julian turned away and began walking toward the surgical wing. His hands curled into fists. His jaw locked tight. She would give him anything, except the truth. Inside the changing room, he peeled off his coat and put on the hospital gown. The sterile scent, the blinding white lights, the hush of steel instruments, it should have frightened him. But he felt nothing now. Until his phone rang. Celeste. He stared at her name for a long moment. Then answered. You're awake? Still mad at me? Her voice was bright, almost sing-song. I made you a special breakfast, it's on the way to the house now, with your favorite coffee, that roast you like. Come on, baby, don't be like this. Julian said nothing. You want a child so badly? I'll fix it, she continued, unbothered. I asked someone to reach out to an orphanage. If there's a suitable baby, we can adopt. Within a year, okay? You'll be a dad, I promise. Julian's voice, when it came, was ice. I don't want the baby anymore. Not hers. Not theirs. And certainly not someone else's child passed off as a gift. Julian, her tone softened, almost maternal. You're my baby. Our 7-year anniversary is in 3 days. I've got a surprise planned. Something really special. Julian didn't respond. He ended the call. He had a surprise too. Without a word, he lay down on the cold, sterile operating table. Eyes open. Heart silent. Future severed. Dr. Lila appeared beside him, her expression gentle, but hesitant. Your recovery's been steady. You're stabilizing, she said. But if you go through with this kidney surgery, it could eliminate any future possibility of having children. Are you sure you want to move forward? Julian's eyes were dark. Deeper than ever. I postponed the surgery before, he said slowly, because I still wanted a child, with Celeste. That was the only reason I waited. He let out a breath. Cold. Final. But I've made up my mind now. This irreversible procedure, was the perfect gift for their 7-year wedding anniversary. A severing. A final answer. The one thing she never wanted to give him, he no longer wanted from her. She had stolen that dream. Crushed it. Poisoned it from the beginning. He wouldn't offer her that part of himself ever again. The operating room was sterile, indifferent. Steel instruments sliced cleanly through his skin. Machines beeped steadily in the background. And just like that, his last biological tie to her was gone. He would never again want a child with Celeste. He would never again let her be part of anything sacred. Hours later, groggy and raw from the anesthesia, Julian opened his eyes to a message from an unknown number. A dropped pin. A wedding boutique. His chest still burning from the surgical wound, Julian got into a car and followed the address. When he arrived, the scene outside made his blood turn to ice. Celeste had just arrived, with Silas. She was leaning against him, her head nestled in the hollow of his chest, her voice soft and aching with tenderness. "You're my husband," she whispered. "I can't give you a public wedding, but I still want you to see me in a gown. Just once." Silas looked hesitant. "Celeste. I don't want to burden you. All this costs so much money." She smiled and reached up to stroke his throat, fingertips grazing his Adam's apple with familiar intimacy. "My love," she murmured, "I may not be able to give you a proper name, but I can give you happiness." Julian sat frozen in the back seat of his car, every breath cutting like glass. Husband? Silas was her husband? Then what was he? The man she fed with lies? The one she kept on a leash? The one she bled dry with love and poison and beautiful words that meant nothing? And happiness, she promised Silas happiness? What about his? He watched her through the window as she touched Silas the same way she had once touched him, like he was hers, like he was home. And for the first time, Julian felt peace. Peace in knowing he would never be a father. And peace in knowing that Celeste would never be the mother of his child. She wasn't worthy. She never was. Fitting, he thought bitterly, that this was the same boutique where he and Celeste had once picked out their wedding attire. The same place. A different lie. A line of luxury cars rolled to a slow stop in front of and behind Julian's vehicle. One by one, Celeste's friends, and his, stepped out. Julian stayed hidden, but he could hear everything. Tonight's just a small ceremony at the boutique. Quiet. Private. Is Celeste really not worried Julian might find out? Please. Julian's sick. He can't give her a child. Celeste lied about the marriage license, remember? Shut the hell up, someone hissed. Julian's still her baby. This whole thing's just to keep Silas happy. He's the one who finally got her pregnant. Julian felt the heat drain from his face. They knew. They all knew. The people he'd grown up with. The friends he'd trusted. The same people who used to eat at his table, celebrate his birthdays, call him brother. They'd known about Celeste's betrayal. They'd watched it unfold like a stage play. And no one, had told him. The boutique itself made it worse. This wasn't just any place. He'd opened it during college, back when he was bored and obsessed with the idea of giving Celeste something beautiful and lasting. Every gown inside had been personally sketched, designed, and commissioned by him, for her. Only the boutique's manager knew he was the real owner. Once the guests had all gone inside, Julian slipped in through the back entrance. Unseen. Uninvited. He climbed to the third floor, where a narrow balcony overlooked the main stage. From the shadows, he watched. Silas stood beneath the lights in a crisp white suit. And Celeste. Celeste had changed into a snow-white wedding gown. His breath caught. That dress. It wasn't just any gown. It was hers. His design. One of a kind. The inspiration had come from the night of their first fight. Back in college, a girl had given him a birthday gift. Celeste had lost it, jealous, possessive, furious. She shoved him against the chalkboard in an empty lecture hall, yelling, demanding, emotional. And then she kissed him. Their very first kiss, fiery, messy, unforgettable. That night, he went home and sketched a gown called First Love. That was the dress she was wearing now. His memory, sewn into white lace and betrayal. On the stage, Celeste and Silas stood together, bathed in applause. The crowd below cheered and clapped, faces Julian recognized. People he had known since childhood. Now all of them stood there, beaming as if watching a fairy tale unfold. He stared, silent, still. Then came the moment that made the world tilt. Celeste reached for a ring box. She opened it slowly. Julian, high above, saw it all, clearly. Inside were 2 matching bands. The exact same set he had once designed for their wedding. The woman's band was hers, no doubt. The same delicate, engraved design. But the man's? Identical to the one he used to wear. Even the ring had become part of their twisted ménage à trois. 3 people. 2 rings. One long, beautiful lie. Then, click. A loud sound. Like a spotlight switching tracks. Suddenly, every stage light went out. The entire room was plunged into darkness. Except for one place. A single, blazing light cut through the black and landed, not on the couple below, but on the man above. Julian. Standing in the rafters. Watching them. Exposed. Alive. And finally, no longer invisible. The moment Celeste saw Julian standing under the spotlight, her amber eyes welled with tears. She dropped Silas's hand like it burned her. Grabbing the hem of her wedding gown, she ran, stumbling, breathless, up the stairs toward him. Gasps echoed through the boutique. Guests watched, stunned, as she trembled from head to toe. Her flawless makeup had drained from her face, leaving her pale as paper. At the top of the landing, she threw herself into Julian's arms, arms that did not return the embrace. "Wait, Julian, please, it's not what you think," she cried, her voice cracking. This whole setup was for a video shoot. A commercial, just a short film. She clutched him tightly, desperate. "You know I designed that ring for you. But you hate being on camera. Silas's hands, they look like yours. That's all. I was going to release the commercial on our anniversary, broadcast it across the city. It was meant to be a surprise." She fumbled in her pocket and pulled out a ring box. Her hands were shaking as she tried to slide the ring onto his finger. But it didn't fit. Julian didn't have to say a word. It wasn't his size. Downstairs, Silas stood frozen, his face ashen, eyes hollow with disbelief. He looked up at the 2 of them, his hands slack at his sides, his soul breaking behind quiet eyes. Then Celeste's voice turned sharp. Cold. Commanding. "My husband is upset," she snapped, glaring at Silas. "Explain yourself, or don't bother showing up at Mariner Holdings again." Silas's voice was thin. Stripped of pride. "Mr. Westcott," he said softly, "this entire event is just an ad campaign. I planned it. It was my idea. The timing was meant to coincide with your wedding anniversary, so we could roll out the campaign across the city." Celeste turned back to Julian, her eyes lighting up with a brittle smile. She wrapped her arms around his waist, as if none of the destruction around them mattered. "There, you heard it. Everything I did, every bit of this, was for you. You're the only one I love, Julian. You always have been. You always will be." She said it like a vow. Like a promise. And Julian realized, he had believed every single one of her sweet words for 27 years. He had believed that voice, that gaze, that touch. Even after the betrayal. Even after the poison. Even after she had rewritten their entire story without him, he still wanted to believe. And now, she stood there, swearing eternal love, in front of the man she carried a child for. Silas staggered back, her words hitting him like a slap. "I wish you and Mr. Westcott a long and happy marriage," he said hoarsely. "May you grow old together, and have many children." The final words, "have many children," landed like a dagger in Julian's chest. Their eyes met. Just for a second. Silas's red-rimmed gaze burned with heartbreak. Then he turned, without another word, and ran. Celeste shouted after him, her voice echoing with panic. "Silas!" She turned and bolted, tearing down the stairs, barefoot, veil trailing behind her like a ghost. Julian moved to the balcony's edge. He watched as Celeste shoved past guests and flung open the boutique doors. Just in time to see Silas step into the street. And just in time to watch the speeding truck crash into him with a sickening, shattering crack. The impact sent his body flying through the air. Then silence. Then screaming. And all Julian could do was stand there and watch. Celeste's scream tore through the night air. "Silas, no!" She threw herself forward, blindly, desperately, diving into the street toward his crumpled form. Her arms wrapped around him, trying to shield him, to block out the pain with her own fragile body. But the truck, still skidding, still unforgiving, struck again. Silas, even in his brokenness, moved. He twisted his body around hers, taking the full brunt of the second impact. Crack. The sound was sickening. Then, silence. And blood. Blood everywhere. The pavement was painted red. Silas's mouth filled with it, bubbling, choking. His lips trembled as he tried to breathe. Celeste knelt in the middle of the road, clutching him in her arms, her once white gown soaked scarlet beneath her knees. Her hands trembled against his chest. Huge, silent tears streamed down her cheeks. "You're okay," she whispered. "You're going to be okay. I'll take you to the hospital right now, I promise, just stay with me, please." Silas coughed, violently, blood running down his chin. "The baby, our baby." Celeste sobbed, shaking. "The baby's fine. You're going to be fine. Everything will be okay, just hold on." And then she lifted her tear-streaked face. Her eyes, wild, broken, furious, locked onto Julian, still standing at the edge of the boutique steps. "You said you loved me," she shouted, voice cracking. "You said you trusted me. I told you it was just an ad, just a shoot, and you didn't believe me." She pointed at Silas's broken body, her whole frame trembling. "Are you happy now?" she cried. "Is this what you needed? To see him bleed? To see him die?" And then he saw it, in her eyes. Hatred. It sliced through her grief like a blade. She didn't just blame the accident. She blamed him. Behind him, murmurs turned into voices, into judgment. Hazel, one of their oldest friends, pushed through the crowd, voice sharp with accusation. "Celeste loved you, Julian. She's always loved you. She only signed that certificate with Silas because of Eleanor, and even then, she left him rotting in the UK for 7 years." Others joined in. "Yeah, she only brought Silas back to help with the video, Julian. She didn't want to wear you out. She did this for you. For your anniversary. You've always had Celeste's heart. Someone sneered. You just couldn't tolerate sharing a single scrap of affection. Silas never even asked for anything back. He worshipped her. You couldn't give him a shred of grace." Julian's hands clenched at his sides. He wasn't sure what hurt more, the accusations, or the twisted conviction in their voices. Like none of them had seen the poison. Like none of them had lived in his skin. He looked down at Celeste, still sobbing over Silas, soaked in blood, still calling him the villain. And in that moment, something inside Julian cracked, not with grief, but with clarity. Once, all these people had said Julian and Celeste were meant to be. Fated. Perfect. A love written in the stars. Now they stood on their self-righteous pedestals, pointing fingers down at him. Judging him. Shaming him. Blaming him. They said he had failed their love by not making room for a third person. They said it was his fault, even though Celeste had lied to him for 7 years. Even though she had robbed him of the truth, his health, his dignity. It was still his fault. Both Silas and Celeste were rushed to the hospital. Julian followed, silent, unnoticed. Celeste's wedding gown was soaked with blood from the waist down, but she refused care. Her arms were crossed, her eyes fixed on the operating room doors. "Check on Silas first," she told the nurses, pushing them away. "I'll wait. I have to wait." Silas's condition was grave, massive internal bleeding, renal rupture. By the time surgeons stabilized him, they had removed his kidney. Celeste sat trembling in the corridor, hands locked in her lap, body pale and lifeless. Then she broke. Tears streamed down her face as she murmured to herself over and over again. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. I never should have abandoned you in London. I shouldn't have ignored you. I shouldn't have mistaken all those things you did for me," she choked back a sob, "for things Julian had done. I thought it was him. I loved the wrong man. It was you all along." Julian stood a few feet away, frozen. What? His breath caught in his throat. She thought Silas was him? That all those quiet, unspoken gestures over the years, the ones that had made her heart swell, weren't his? His lips curled into something like a smile, but there was nothing warm about it. Just a quiet, hollow ache that pressed against the inside of his ribs. His fingers shook as they curled into fists. Because he had been there. From the beginning. He was 5 when he learned that Celeste had low platelet levels. That her body couldn't clot properly. That she'd need regular blood transfusions. And he was terrified. He thought she would die. He begged his parents, screamed, cried, pleaded. They didn't want to let him, but eventually, they gave in. He became her blood source. Over and over. Year after year. His body stayed frail. He was always sick. Always pale. While Celeste grew stronger. Every illness, every fever he endured quietly, he wore it like armor, because she was healthy, and he thought that meant it was worth it. In middle school, his parents had had enough. They tried to take him away, to protect him, to save him from himself. Celeste believed it was her begging outside the Westcott home that changed their minds. But the truth? Julian had threatened to die. He had looked his mother in the eyes and said he would rather not live at all than live away from Celeste. Only then did they let him stay. Now he stood just beyond the corridor light, listening to Celeste mourn another man. To regret choosing him. To say Silas had done what he had done, without ever knowing it was Julian all along. He swallowed hard. And realized, he had regrets too. If he'd known this was where their story would lead. This twisted mess of half-truths and swapped identities, blood soaked into pavement, and love reduced to accident. He would have never let that story begin. He would have burned the first page before it had a chance to be written. Without a word, Julian turned and walked toward the elevator. Not far away, Celeste finally collapsed. Her body gave out, hitting the hospital floor hard. And this time, Julian didn't move. He didn't call for help. He didn't run to catch her. He let her fall. The night was quiet. Julian sat alone in the vast silence of the villa. But his phone? It wouldn't stop. His Instagram had exploded. People he hadn't spoken to in years, friends, classmates, family friends, colleagues, were all reposting the same video. The groom's face wasn't visible. But the bride, the radiant woman in white, was unmistakably Celeste, smiling as she slipped a ring onto her partner's finger. The captions all read, "Happy 7th anniversary to Mariner and her beloved husband." Julian stared at the screen. Then smiled. A sharp, humorless smile. The kind that tasted like rust and regret. 7 years. They'd been together for 7 years. And Celeste had also been with Silas for, 7 years. He wasn't even sure who these people were congratulating anymore. That moment on the stage, the one where she stood with Silas, radiant, glowing, reaching for that ring, they'd all posted it. All of them. His phone buzzed with notifications, strangers and friends tagging him. "Mr. Westcott is so lucky. Happy anniversary to the power couple. A wedding fit for royalty, just like their first one." Meanwhile, Celeste was still unconscious in the hospital, her body broken and bleeding. And the world? The world thought she was his. His phone rang again. Julian answered. Eleanor's voice snapped through the speaker, panicked, desperate. "Celeste has miscarried. She's hemorrhaging. We need you at the hospital right now. She needs a blood transfusion, immediately." Julian's eyes turned cold, his voice low and final. "I'm sorry, Eleanor. I'm not her husband. I'm not her boyfriend. I'm not even a relative. I have no obligation to save her." The silence on the line trembled. "So you know." Julian chuckled. It was quiet. Ruthless. "Thank you for the pain you gave me 7 years ago," he said. "Because of you, I never had to fight her for a divorce." He paused. Then, slowly, cruelly. "If she bleeds out tonight, I won't be attending the funeral. Because I'm not the man she chose, not then, not now. You're just like your grandmother." Eleanor spat. "Cold. Hateful. You're exactly the kind of person I always despised." Click. She hung up. Julian didn't sleep. All night, he sat alone in the quiet house, gathering every last piece of their shared history. He started with the wedding photos. Took a hammer. Smashed each frame one by one. Glass shattered like ice across the hardwood floor. Then he opened the closets. Every outfit she'd bought for him, tailored suits, silk ties, the watches she chose for his birthdays, the cufflinks engraved with his initials, gone. He boxed it all up. Even the laptop she gave him. Gone. At 3 a.m., he called a local auction house. Told them to pick everything up by dawn. But that wasn't the end. In the garage, tucked behind old boxes, he found a small, beat-up toy car. A cheap model. He remembered it instantly. He'd been 5. They'd fought. He was sulking in the garden, refusing to eat. Celeste had shown up, crying and giggling, holding that tiny car. "It's for you," she'd said. "Because you're the fastest, the coolest. My Julian always wins." That memory had once made him smile. Now it made his stomach turn. He carried the car outside, along with every letter, every gift, every relic of their shared childhood. He piled it all in the courtyard. And one by one, he burned them. The flames rose against the night sky, wild and orange and unforgiving. And as the ashes of their past blew into the wind, Julian stood in the smoke. Face illuminated by fire. Watching it all. Finally. Disappear. Julian's phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. "I never knew she loved me that much. The kind of love that doesn't care if it lives or dies." Julian stared at the screen. Then typed only one reply. "Congrats, Silas. Enjoy what I threw away. 3 hours later, news came through. Celeste had woken up. She was alive. And so, probably, was Silas. Julian leaned back against his seat and exhaled slowly. He knew what that meant. The blood. At Mariner Private Hospital, he'd arranged for 5 units of his blood to be stored there, his rare type, hers as well. Just in case. Always for her. She'd never needed it before. She hadn't been injured. Hadn't fallen seriously ill. But he'd kept donating, every 6 months, just in case. Last night, it must have all been used. Every drop. 27 years of love, devotion, sacrifice. Erased in 5 hours. The next morning, Julian was forcibly escorted to the hospital by Celeste's security team. He didn't fight. Not anymore. When they threw open the door to the hospital suite, he stood at the threshold, silent. Celeste was curled in Silas's arms on the bed, her skin pale, her lips colorless. She looked up, and her amber eyes burned with rage. "Julian," she shouted, her voice trembling. "I lost the baby. And you paid the doctors to mutilate Silas. You had his kidney ripped out. You made sure he'll never be a father again." Julian blinked. He hadn't said a word. But Celeste was already convinced. Before he could respond, a doctor nearby stepped forward. "Ms. Mariner," he said nervously, "Mr. Westcott told me if I didn't remove Mr. Pierce's kidney, he'd destroy my family. Said none of us would survive in Riverfall." Julian's eyes narrowed, cold. He'd never even spoken to that man. But the lie was already spreading. Celeste peeled herself away from Silas and stormed toward him. Her eyes, once full of love, were filled with hatred. And then, slap. The sound cracked through the room. Julian's head jerked sideways from the force. For the first time ever, Celeste hit him. "How could you?" she screamed. "How could you use money and power to destroy someone like Silas? What have you become? You're a monster." Julian turned back slowly. He met her gaze, no longer pleading, no longer breaking. Just, finished. The sting on his face was nothing compared to the ache in his chest. Not because she hit him. But because now, even her rage, her tears, were no longer for him. That part of her had died. And something inside him had died with it. He smiled, lips curling upward without joy. "Just a kidney," he said calmly. "If I wanted, I could have bought his life." Celeste's eyes widened. Her whole body trembled. Slap. She hit him again, harder this time. Julian staggered back a step. His cheek throbbed. But it wasn't the skin that hurt. It was the knowledge that the woman he'd once given his entire life to was now willing to destroy him to protect someone else. "Take him to the OR," Celeste said coldly, eyes never leaving Julian. "Take his kidney. Let's see how much pain he can buy his way out of." 2 doctors appeared behind him. Julian stared at her, stunned. What did you just say?" Celeste's amber eyes swept over him, cold, flat, void of affection. "You can't go through life owing people," she said. "You hurt Silas. You owe him. So now, like him, you'll give up a kidney. Equal and fair." She tilted her head, as if offering a gift. "Don't worry," she added softly. "I'll still love you, just like before." With a glance, she signaled the doctors. 2 men in white coats stepped forward. Julian jerked back instinctively, but one of them raised a syringe, already primed, and plunged it into his arm. The effect was immediate. His vision blurred. His legs gave out. He collapsed, his last sight being Celeste crawling back into Silas's arms, stroking his face with trembling fingers. "Don't be sad," she whispered. "Your eyes are red, and it's breaking my heart." Then darkness. Somewhere in that darkness, memories surfaced. He was 20 again. Celeste curled in his arms, playful, spoiled, teasing. She reached up and touched his cheek, her voice coy. "I love it when your eyes go red, especially in bed. So sexy." And in that memory, he'd smiled, because he'd thought it meant she loved him. But now? Now he understood. When a woman truly loves a man, it's not about what makes her smile. It's about what breaks her heart. The pain came next. A deep, gut-pulling agony that no drug could mask. Somewhere behind the veil of anesthesia, Julian heard them. Celeste's voice. The doctor's replies. "Ms. Mariner, it appears Mr. Westcott had a prior kidney cleaning surgery. Perhaps preventative. Not uncommon." Celeste's tone was cool. Disinterested. "So what? Remove it anyway. Let Silas see it. His eyes have been red for days. He can't take more grief." The doctor hesitated. "He's under, but the anesthetic still needs time. We usually wait an hour." "He's already unconscious," Celeste snapped. "Do it now. I want it done." Julian's body convulsed as the first incision was made. He wasn't fully numb. He felt it. All of it. The slicing. The tearing. The cold tools working inside him. He bled, badly. And then, silence. When Julian opened his eyes again, everything was white. The ceiling. The sheets. The world. It was 2 days later. He didn't know where he was. He just knew one thing. Part of him was missing. And not just the organ. Something far deeper had been taken. And no one planned to give it back. Celeste stood at the foot of the hospital bed, her amber eyes still clouded with anger. "So," she said coldly, "you're finally awake." Julian's throat burned, dry, raw, but before he could speak, Celeste continued. "You lost a lot of blood. It was Silas who saved you. You should be grateful. You owe him." Beside her, Silas sat quietly peeling an orange, his smile bashful. "I don't need Mr. Westcott to thank me," he said softly. "I know how much you care about him. Giving him half my blood? No big deal. If it took all of it to save him, I'd give that too. Even if it killed me." His voice was gentle. Selfless. It would have sounded noble, if Julian hadn't known better. Then Celeste spoke again. Her words cut deeper than the scalpel had. "You owe him, Julian. And you're going to repay him, with your identity." Julian turned to her slowly. He didn't even feel the pain anymore. Only a strange emptiness. A stillness that came when you realized there was nothing left to burn. He looked at her, but not with longing. Not with grief. Just clarity. Her face, once so familiar, no longer held light. No warmth. Just demand. Just expectation. He rose from the bed slowly, every muscle screaming. But he moved anyway. Celeste stepped forward instantly, gripping his wrist hard. "What are you doing?" she snapped. "You don't care if I die? If Silas dies? You owe us both." Julian's face was pale, drained, but his eyes were steady. Cold. Clear. He let out a hollow laugh. "Do I?" he said. "Do I really owe you anything?" Before she could answer, Silas looked up, his tone soft as ever. "I don't want anything. I just want peace between you and Mr. Westcott. If it helps. I'll disappear. I'll never show my face again." Then his expression shifted. His lips lost color. And he collapsed. Celeste screamed. She rushed to his side, throwing Julian's hand away like he was nothing more than dead weight. She cradled Silas's head in her lap, panicked. "You see," she cried, her voice trembling with fury. "Not everyone is willing to excuse you. Silas gave you blood, he stayed at your bedside, he didn't leave the room for 2 days while you slept, afraid you might never wake up. We didn't betray you. You should be grateful." She looked up, fire in her gaze. "Your grandmother's dead, Julian. Grace is gone. You have no one left in Riverfall." "No one." Julian said nothing. Because in that moment, something inside him finally settled. Not peace. Not pain. Just resolution. He now understood. The mistake hadn't been loving Celeste. It had been staying. Staying behind when he could have left. Choosing her over himself. Choosing this place over freedom. Doctors rushed in. Silas was lifted onto a gurney and wheeled away to the OR. And as the doors swung shut behind them, Julian, still weak, still stitched and bleeding, put one hand against the wall. And walked out. No goodbye. No explanation. No more illusions. Julian unlocked his phone. A flood of messages from Mark lit up the screen. "Mr. Westcott, the remaining buyers have arrived in Riverfall. They're ready to finalize the contracts." Julian didn't hesitate. He returned to the law office, back to the seat where his name once held weight. And he signed it all away. Every last piece of the Westcott family legacy. Gone. The final deal was personal. The shares of Mariner Holdings, Celeste's so-called gift, the only thing she had left him with, he'd saved them for last. At first, Julian had considered returning them to her. Even after the betrayal. Even after the lies. He'd wanted to leave them both some measure of dignity. But not anymore. Not after everything. This wouldn't end in grace. If Celeste had destroyed him, then he would return the favor. He opened a new message. To Nora. Celeste's fiercest competitor. The one woman she couldn't control. Couldn't buy. Couldn't intimidate. Prepare $500 million. I'm selling you my entire stake in Mariner Holdings. The reply came almost instantly. Deal. Julian didn't smile. Didn't gloat. He simply looked up, out the window, toward the skyline of Riverfall. A shopping mall's digital billboard lit up across the street. Celeste's face filled the screen, flawless as always. She stood beside Silas, their bodies angled together like the perfect ad campaign. Her voice echoed across the plaza, amplified for the world. "I owe the public an apology," she said sweetly. "There's been a long-standing rumor that Julian and I were husband and wife. In truth, that was a misunderstanding. I married Silas 7 years ago." She paused, then smiled with practiced warmth. "Julian only ever helped protect us. I asked him to play a role, for the sake of Silas's safety. That's all. I hope the public can forgive the confusion. My husband, from beginning to end, has always been Silas." Julian watched, expressionless. Not a flicker of rage. Not a twitch of grief. Just silence. Today was the day after their wedding anniversary. The day after Celeste and Silas had celebrated their real 7-year mark. He remembered that first day, when he had carried her over the threshold, called her his forever, believed in the illusion. Now? It was just a date on a calendar. And this time, it didn't hurt. Because there was nothing left to feel. Julian's phone rang. Celeste. He let it ring for a moment. Then answered. Her voice came sharp and angry through the speaker. "I order you to return to the hospital. Silas is having complications. You need to come take care of him." Julian stared at the screen, unmoving. Then spoke, quietly, coldly. "Didn't you already pay for him, with my kidney? There was silence. Just for a second. Then her voice rose again, sharp and self-righteous. Julian, let's be clear. Silas's condition got worse because of you. Your appearance, your jealousy, it all triggered this. And now, he'll never be able to have children. Do you know what it feels like for a man to be told he'll never be a father? Julian's chest tightened. The words cut deep, but not in the way she thought. Because he knew. He knew exactly what that felt like. The memory came back, the operating room, the pain, the blood. The organ taken from him. He'd retrieved it later. Kept it in a cryogenic container. And then, he'd sent it. To the same restaurant where, for 6 years, he and Celeste had celebrated their wedding anniversaries. The staff manager had instructions. If Celeste ever returned, on what would have been their 7th and final anniversary, he was to give her the gift Julian had left behind. The kidney. The truth. The end. I know what it feels like, Julian said, his voice flat. Celeste didn't listen. Her tone switched to coaxing, entitled, demanding affection under the guise of forgiveness. Then if you do know, come take care of Silas. I'll forgive you. You can still be by my side. You and Silas, there's no need to choose. You can both be mine. Julian froze. The audacity. She wanted them both. 2 men. 1 heart. Endless entitlement. And in his mind, her voice echoed. From that day so long ago. Julian, I love you. I will love you forever, only you. He remembered the laughter, the crowd cheering. Celeste, someone had teased, what if you break Julian's heart? Then I'll jump off the top floor of Mariner Holdings, she declared, laughing in her white dress, so sure of herself. Those voices felt like ghosts now. All of it, gone. Dead. He took a slow breath. Then, with the last of his strength, he said it. Calm. Clear. Final. Don't you see how ridiculous you sound? What is it about you that I could possibly still want? A pause. Then. Celeste, we're done. There was no marriage license. No paperwork to dissolve. 7 years of illusion, undone with 2 words. We're breaking up. That was it. The love story without a contract. The promise without the paper. And now. The goodbye that needed no signature. Julian hung up the phone. The silence afterward didn't ache anymore. He walked to a small cafe near the city center, the kind of quiet place where no one asked questions. There, with calm precision, he opened his notebook, dialed the number he knew by heart. Mark. Mr. Westcott, Mark answered promptly. What can I do for you? Julian spoke evenly, as if listing the weather. First, as Hazel Corp's majority shareholder, I'm transferring all my shares to support Sherry. Remove Hazel from her position. Effective immediately. Second, release the report on Crane Group's missing funds. File a lawsuit against Laura. I want every penny of that $300 million back. Third, he paused, voice cooling further, turn in the evidence from Grace's estate. Eleanor killed her own son. Grace kept it hidden. No more. Deliver everything to the police. He didn't flinch. Years ago, he had begged Grace to help Hazel win a company war against her own sister, because Celeste asked. Hazel's power today came from his compromise. As for Eleanor, Grace had always known the truth. Eleanor had killed her own son, and begged Grace to keep it quiet. Grace had agreed. Quiet loyalty. Quiet guilt. She died never knowing Eleanor would repay her silence with hatred. And Laura? Laura had come to him in secret 6 months ago, buried in a family debt crisis. Don't tell Celeste, she'd whispered. Please. He'd given her the money, $300 million. And now? She stood with Celeste. Lied for her. Hid behind her. Every kindness he had shown them, they'd used as weapons. So now, he took everything back. The last person he met in Riverfall was Nora. They sat in a private office, clean, white, clinical. Nora's voice was calm, precise. You asked for speed. I have half the amount now. The rest will be wired to your account within the week. Julian didn't blink. Didn't hesitate. Nora searched his face. Are you sure? She asked. Once this contract is signed, I'll own Mariner Holdings outright. Celeste won't just lose the company, she'll never rise again. Julian reached for the pen. No hesitation. He signed. The final deal. The final severance. Nora closed the folder slowly, watching him. Later, she personally drove him to the airport. Just before he left, she spoke again, softer this time. You don't want to stay? Not even for a while? Julian turned. His eyes met hers, quiet, unreadable. But instead of answering her question, he said. Congratulations, Nora. Starting today, of the 5 legacy families in Riverfall, yours is the last one standing. He turned, stepped through security. And never looked back. Celeste. This is how you're remembered. Not as his lover. Not as his wife. But as the ending. No court. No trial. No public reckoning. Just one man walking away. And taking everything with him. From this moment forward. They are done. 2 strangers. 2 ghosts. Equal in silence. Forever severed. In the sterile quiet of the hospital corridor, Celeste sat frozen, her phone still glowing in her palm. She had replayed Julian's voice over and over again in her head, but she couldn't believe it. Celeste, we're done. Done. 2 syllables that never once appeared in the 2 decades they'd known each other, not in their fiercest arguments, not in their darkest silences. Not when she'd thrown things. Not when he'd walked out and slammed the door. Because they'd always found their way back. But now. He had hung up. And vanished. When she tried to call him again, the line was dead. Disconnected. Blocked. Erased. And she remembered it all. How she had lain outside the operating room, bleeding, body cold, fingers trembling. How Eleanor had called him, begged him. And Julian had said no. She dies, I won't attend the funeral. She had never felt rage like that. Not even when she lost the baby. Not even when her body screamed that she was dying. If Silas hadn't kept returning every 6 months, quietly, secretly, to donate blood to the Mariner Private Hospital, she would have died on that table. It wasn't luck. It wasn't money. It was Silas. She had known since she was young that something was wrong with her body. Eleanor had explained it in clinical terms. She had a rare condition that made her dangerously low on platelets. She would need regular transfusions, maybe for life. Her grandmother said she had hired anonymous adult donors. Each time they gave blood, they were paid $500,000. Celeste never questioned it. In her teenage years, hot-headed, jealous, reckless, she often came home with bruises and cuts from fights. She fought girls who liked Julian, who whispered about him behind her back. She bled a lot. She needed more and more blood. Then, after she graduated, after she learned to use power and strategy over emotion, she stopped getting hurt. And stopped needing the transfusions. What she never realized was that every single one of those blood donations wasn't from anonymous adults. It was from Silas. For 20 years, his frail body kept hers alive. And for 20 years, she had no idea. Because every time she needed a transfusion, the person lying in the cot beside her was Julian. Smiling weakly, but always teasing. You. I feel so lightheaded. You better save me some dessert later. She'd laugh. Roll her eyes. And feed him double portions at dinner. It was the start of her favorite ritual. It was why she spoiled him so much. It was why she thought she loved him. Until 6 months ago. Eleanor had finally cornered her, demanding she do her duty as a wife and finally sleep with Silas. Celeste hadn't wanted to. She'd refused. Locked herself in the bathroom. Hurt herself, hoping the blood would end the conversation. But instead, it brought clarity. Because that night, Eleanor had screamed through the door. You've been drinking his blood for 20 years. The least you can do is give him a night of your damn time. The world froze. It was never Julian. It was never Julian. All those times she thought he had saved her. It was Silas. Always Silas. And yet, it had always been Julian's name on her lips. Now, staring at the cold hospital walls, Celeste realized. Julian hadn't walked away. He had finally let go. And Silas? He had loved her from the shadows for 20 years. And she had mistaken his love for someone else's. Just then, a nurse from the room next door came rushing in. Mrs. Mariner, your husband is awake. Celeste's heart jumped. Her first instinct was Julian, he. But she caught herself mid-sentence. He wasn't her husband. Not anymore. Silas was. She stood up abruptly and rushed next door. Silas's eyes were bloodshot, filled with anguish. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Celeste. Let's get divorced. I have no kidneys left. I caused all the problems between you and Westcott. This is all my fault. I shouldn't stay by your side anymore. Celeste collapsed into his arms. She held him tight, tears flooding her eyes. You didn't do anything wrong. I was the one who loved the wrong person all these years. Julian's kidney has already been taken and given to you. You nearly died saving me. From now on, I'll treat you right. I mean it. Silas clung to her like a drowning man to driftwood. Are you serious? I can really stay with you. I thought, loving you was the most extravagant dream I'd ever dared to have. Are you saying, you really don't love Julian anymore? The moment he said that name, Julian, Celeste felt her chest tighten with pain. Yes, she had misidentified her savior. But her 27 years of love for Julian, that was real. You don't just forget something like that. But then she remembered Julian's voice on the phone. Cold. Detached. She remembered bleeding out in a hospital hallway while he refused to come. She remembered the way her love, her devotion, was thrown back in her face like it had never mattered at all. No. The man who held her now, Silas, he was the one who had bled for her, again and again, without ever asking for anything in return. She had to believe this was where her heart should finally rest. Still, a piece of her mind wandered. What if Julian called and asked for forgiveness? Could they go back? A part of her itched to call him. To test him. But she resisted. This time, he needed to be the one who broke. She needed him to feel the sting of being left behind. But 2 weeks passed. And he never called. No messages. No voicemail. No trace. And then the news began to roll in, one scandal after another. Hazel, kicked out of her own company by her sister. Laura, arrested, along with the entire financial team at Crane Corp. Investigations, lawsuits, reputational collapse. One afternoon, Hazel showed up at Linden Court Estate, pale and frantic. "Where is Julian? I've been looking for him for 2 weeks." Celeste, startled by the intrusion, frowned. "He's not at the villa." "Then where else would he be?" "I've been furious with him, he wouldn't dare go far." But Hazel shook her head, panic in her eyes. "He's not there. I've searched everywhere. I even tried calling you, your phone was off. That's when I found out you've been here the whole time." Celeste's breath caught. A strange silence settled over her. Something wasn't right. Something was missing. Not far off, Silas's eyes betrayed a flicker of panic. Celeste caught it immediately. Something was off. These past 2 weeks, she'd barely touched her phone. But now Hazel was telling her she'd tried calling, many times, and never got through. Celeste instinctively reached for her phone to check. But before she could unlock it, Silas stepped forward, his handsome face clouded with concern. I just didn't want you to worry. You've just had massive transfusions. You needed rest." Celeste's expression softened instantly. Of course. Silas had donated half his blood to save her, and the other half to Julian. He was their mutual savior. Even if he'd blocked Hazel's calls, he'd only done it out of love, right? Her voice gentled. "You could have just gone to the Westcott estate to find him. Why didn't you?" Hazel's voice cracked. "I tried. Julian's gone." Celeste froze. "Gone? No. Impossible. Julian, leave her? Julian, who'd worshipped her since they were teens? Julian, who had never lasted a full day without checking in? Even after she betrayed him, even after everything. No. It couldn't be." Her voice trembled with disbelief. "That's not possible. Julian would never leave me." He was angry. Maybe hurt. But not gone. She stood, legs slightly shaky, ready to go see for herself. Silas reached for her hand, eyes wide with worry. "Let me come with you. I'll beg him if I have to, I'll get on my knees and make him forgive you." Celeste paused. Her gaze softened again as she looked at Silas, so earnest, so selfless. "Wait for me here. I'll go alone. If he sees you, it'll only make things worse." She left quickly. Silas stood frozen by the doorway. And the moment the door clicked shut, his sorrow vanished like smoke. A slow, satisfied smile curled across his lips. "You're finally gone, Julian. If you hadn't left, I would have had to take your life myself." Back at the villa, Celeste stormed through every room. Every hallway. Every floor. But Julian was nowhere to be found. Not a single trace. Not a note. Not a word. And for the first time, true panic gripped her chest. A housemaid stepped forward, her voice nervous and small. "Ms. Mariner. Mr. Westcott's things, they're all gone. And, there's a barrel in the backyard. Someone burned a lot of stuff in it." Celeste's face twisted with fury. "Julian is missing and you didn't think to tell me?" The maid shrank under her glare. You made it very clear in the news, ma'am. That you and Mr. Westcott were no longer involved." Celeste froze. The headlines. The press conference. The public declaration that her only husband was Silas. She had broadcasted to the entire world that Julian was nothing to her. Her heart thudded in her chest. Suddenly frantic, she ran upstairs to the master bedroom. She flung open the wardrobe. Julian's clothes were gone. Not a single cufflink, not a trace of his cologne. Even the matching couple outfits they once wore, only her half remained. Downstairs now, her breath ragged, she stumbled to the backyard. The barrel was still there. Its iron side scorched, the ash inside still faintly warm. Among the blackened remains, shapes were still visible. She recognized them immediately. The motorcycle models. Julian's favorite. She used to win them for him at arcades when they were kids. Later, as he grew up and turned to tech, she'd camp online through the night just to snag him the latest gadgets. She still remembered how his eyes would light up when she'd surprise him with a new laptop. "You're incredible," he'd say, lifting her into his arms. "I just read about this one last week." "Well, my Julian deserves the best of everything," she'd whisper back. There were ashes of their custom-designed outfits too. Julian would draw the cuts and lines. She'd add details, flourishes. He'd always incorporate her ideas. Always. Now, all of it was burned to ash. Celeste collapsed to her knees in front of the barrel, fists clenched, tears spilling freely. "Julian." Her phone rang. She answered with a trembling hand. "Ms. Mariner, we've tracked his movements," her assistant said carefully. "Mr. Westcott boarded a flight to Australia exactly 2 weeks ago. And, the Westcott family assets have all been liquidated. Even the Westcott Group headquarters has been sold." The phone slipped from her hand. It hit the grass with a soft thud. Celeste didn't move. Her entire world, every memory, every thread of connection to Julian, had gone up in smoke. And he'd made sure there was nothing left for her to hold on to. Celeste's porcelain-like face turned ghostly pale. Her hand trembled as she dialed Julian's number again. "The number you dialed is unavailable. Please try again later." Over and over again, the same robotic voice echoed in her ears. She switched to Instagram. His account had been deleted. Her heart raced. No. No, this can't be real. She raced to the Westcott estate. Empty. Furniture gone. Curtains stripped. Like no one had ever lived there. Then the company headquarters. Sold, to a Northbridge conglomerate. Every subsidiary, either sold off or acquired by international buyers. Corporate registrations updated. Julian's name removed from every document, every record. She tried calling his parents. Voicemails. No response. Nothing. No one. Celeste staggered backward. Her knees nearly gave out. He was gone. Not mad. Not hiding. Gone. In desperation, she called everyone they had ever known. Childhood friends. Former classmates. Trusted employees. Family friends. Each one said the same thing. "I haven't seen him. He hasn't contacted me. I have no idea where he went." Hazel came to see her, visibly shaken. "Celeste, those 30% shares that backed me at the company? They were Julian's. He sold them to my older sister, which is why I got ousted. And that wedding you had at the bridal shop with Silas? Everyone who attended. Julian went after them. Laura was arrested. I lost everything. The rest? All ruined. Their families abandoned them. All because they'd accepted his kindness. And then stayed silent when you betrayed him. He didn't just hate you, Celeste. He hated all of us." Celeste's face drained of every last drop of color. Her eyes, usually so sharp and proud, filled with raw pain. "He hates me, and he hates all of you." Then, her assistant called. "Ms. Mariner, we've traced Mr. Westcott's last known location. After he was discharged from the hospital, he visited the cafe across from Mariner Holdings. The last person he met with was Nora." A new kind of fire ignited in Celeste's chest: jealousy, fury, fear. Nora Kingsley. The most poised, most talented heir in Riverfall. And more importantly, a woman who had always loved Julian. Without a second thought, Celeste called her. She had to know. Why Nora? Why her, at the very end? What did Julian say before he vanished? When Nora heard Celeste mention Julian's name, she laughed. Cold. Unapologetic. You're asking now? Isn't it a little late? Your so-called marriage with Julian was a lie. One he finally uncovered. Celeste's voice trembled. This is between me and Julian. Just tell me, where is he? Nora didn't hesitate. Australia. And he's never coming back. Oh, and in case you haven't heard, Mariner Holdings is holding a shareholders' meeting tomorrow. Celeste's tone turned icy. Why do you care about the shareholders' meeting? That's none of your business. Nora chuckled, full of disdain. 7 years ago, out of guilt for marrying Silas, you transferred all your Mariner Holdings shares to Julian. And 2 weeks ago, Julian sold all of them to me, for $500 million. You're being removed from your own company. Celeste staggered back, clutching her chest. A mouthful of blood spilled from her lips. No, that's not true. Julian wouldn't do this to me. You tricked him again, didn't you? Nora's voice softened, just barely. Julian nearly died more than once for you. Kept it all from you. And even then, that $500 million, it doesn't even come close to what he gave up for you. The call cut off. Celeste immediately redialed in desperation. Tell me what you meant. What do you mean Julian nearly died for me? Tell me, Nora. Nora sneered on the other end. If Julian didn't love you this much, I would have done everything in my power to steal him away. But you? After today, you'll never get him back. Once tomorrow's shareholder meeting is over, I'll go to him. And you? You'll lose everything, him, and Mariner Holdings. Then Nora hung up. A second later, she sent a string of images to Celeste's phone. Celeste's hands trembled as she opened them. Photos, one after another. Julian, as a teenager, sitting beside her hospital bed, donating blood. Julian smiling weakly, pain in his eyes, and 4 needles still lodged in his arm. Records, appointment logs, blood donation slips. All signed by Julian. She flipped through them, her mind reeling. He had gone to the hospital regularly. Always to the hematology department. He had been her blood donor all along. She remembered what her grandmother had told her, that it was Silas who'd saved her. That he was the donor. That he'd done it for years. All lies. It was Julian. It was always Julian. He gave, and gave, and gave. And never asked for anything back. Tears blurred her vision. Her entire body trembled in rage and grief. Grandmother lied to me. Julian. You gave me so much. She collapsed to the floor, her phone clattering beside her. Photos of Julian's selfless love staring back at her. Celeste floored the gas pedal, her Porsche roaring down the highway at 150 miles per hour, tears blurring her vision. The wheels screeched as she swung into the Mariner estate. She didn't wait for the butler, just stormed straight into Eleanor's private study. What she saw made her stumble back in disgust. Silas. Kneeling like a pale little cat. Draped in scraps of lace that barely covered his skin. Head bowed. Trembling. Performing for her grandmother. Celeste gagged, her hand flying to her mouth. What the actual hell? She gripped the doorframe, her fingers digging into the wood. Her eyes, wide, unblinking, stared at the 2 figures before her. Her voice was ice. Well. What are you 2 doing? Silas turned, eyes wild, face pale. He fumbled, tripped over himself trying to stand, the ridiculous lingerie slipping off as he fell. See, Celeste, wait, listen to me. I can explain. He crawled toward her, desperate, scrambling to cover his shame with a wrinkled shirt. It's not what it looks like, I swear, Celeste, Celeste, please. Eleanor didn't move. Didn't blink. Her expression was calm, cold, an empress surveying her crumbling court. There's nothing to explain, she said, voice even. Celeste laughed, quietly at first, then with something sharp and brittle in her tone. So, Grandma wanted to test drive him first before marrying him off to me? Was that the plan? Silas collapsed at her feet, clutching her ankle. I didn't want this. I did it for you. Your sister's been trying to take your CEO seat. Eleanor said if I pleased her, she'd make sure all the inheritance went to you. Celeste's face turned to stone. She lifted her heel, and kicked him off her. My sister? That useless thing? You think I needed you to whore yourself out to keep my seat? She took a step back, towering over him. Eyes no longer soft. No longer in love. Only filled with contempt. She already knew the truth. Her investigations had confirmed it all. Silas' blood type didn't even match hers. He never saved her. Not even once. Eleanor's face turned dark, but she sneered all the same. He's just a man. Silas has been mine for years, just a toy. If you want him, take him. If not, he'll end up like his pathetic father, trimming hedges for our family. Silas shrieked, backing away in horror. No. No, I want to be with Celeste. Celeste, I love you. I was raped, okay? She forced me. I was 19. But his pleas fell flat. Celeste didn't flinch. Not this time. She'd been lied to. Used. Humiliated. But now she saw everything clearly. Celeste stared at Eleanor, her amber eyes burning. So tell me, she asked, voice sharp as glass. Who insisted I marry Silas? Who made me drug Julian with sterilizers? Was it you, or him? She pointed directly at Silas, her finger trembling with fury. Silas froze, his face going pale. He turned to Eleanor, silently begging her to speak up, to take the blame. But the old woman just smiled, cruel and calm. I never liked that Westcott boy, she said coolly. But I wasn't the one pushing poison. Silas intrigued me at the time. I wanted him. He made the offer. I accepted. Silas exploded. You lying witch. You said you'd never tell her. His voice cracked into a scream. For 7 years, he hadn't been in England as he claimed. No. He'd been imprisoned in Eleanor's private estate outside the city, her pet, her plaything. Celeste's eyes filled with venom. This won't end here, Silas. I swear on everything, it won't. Silas lunged forward, grabbing her arm. I love you. I've always loved you. Everything I did because I love you. Celeste didn't hesitate. She raised her heel, and kicked him across the face. The sharp point of her stiletto tore his lip open. Blood dripped down his chin. She didn't flinch. She turned back to Eleanor. I'll come for you, too. You won't get away with this. Then she grabbed Silas by the arm, and dragged him out of the Mariner estate. Naked. Bleeding. Defeated. The butlers, maids, and security guards stood frozen as Celeste passed by, heels clicking like gunshots against marble. She didn't care who saw. She wanted them to see. Let the world know what kind of filth her family had tried to force on her. And they did. Just hours later, the headlines exploded. One photo. One blurry, shameful image. Silas Pierce, heir of nothing, sprawled half-naked on the Mariner estate's floor, bruised, bleeding, eyes wild with terror. It was everywhere. What exactly are Pierce and Mariner playing at? The tabloids had a field day. Netizens flooded in. Was that a kink dungeon? Why's he wearing lingerie? Power move or total meltdown? Celeste, meanwhile, locked Silas in an old farmhouse. No phone. No clothes. No mercy. He screamed. She didn't answer. This time, she was the one holding the leash. Silas was on his knees, eyes red, voice trembling. It was Eleanor who ruined me, he choked. She knew how much I loved you. That night, when I was 19, she called me to her room, said she'd approve of us, if I just came. But she drugged me. She used me. She violated me. Celeste didn't flinch. Her hand cracked across his face with a sharp smack that echoed through the stone walls. You loved me, she hissed. So I was supposed to love you back. You destroyed everything I had with Julian, what do you think I should do to you in return? Her voice dropped to ice. The divorce papers are already being processed. Silas stared at her, stunned. Then lunged forward to hug her, but she shoved him back so hard he stumbled. Celeste, wait. I know you still love Julian. I won't fight him for your heart. If you want to give him your husband's place, I'll just stay behind you. I'll be your shadow. Your silent man. Please, is that enough? Celeste looked at his face, so smooth, so boyish, and felt nothing but disgust. Her mind filled with Julian. With all the times he'd clenched his jaw in pain and left silent marks on her neck when he was upset. That was Julian's way, reserved, smoldering, but always real. When had she ever looked at Silas and thought he was the one? Only after Eleanor lied. Only after she was told that Silas had saved her life. Such a simple lie. One she could have easily disproven. If only she'd bothered to check. Celeste pulled a thick folder from her coat pocket and threw it at Silas. Photographs. Screenshots. Notes. You were already seducing Eleanor 10 years ago, she said flatly. You convinced her to block me and Julian. You suggested she force me to marry you. You're the one who planned the sterilization, who drugged Julian so he could never have children. And all of it so she'd finally let me marry him. Silas turned chalk white. Still, he shook his head, frantically denying. No, it wasn't me, it was her. All of it was Eleanor. I tried to stop her. She wanted Julian to suffer. Celeste said nothing. She took his phone, unlocked it, and ran the recovery program she'd installed. Every deleted message returned. Every text. Every plan. Every lie. She watched the screen. 2 accounts. Fake names. Messages sent to Julian, mocking him, taunting him. Worse still, notes upon notes. A timeline of betrayal. Exact dosages. Suppliers of the drugs. Everything catalogued. You drugged him yourself, she said quietly. You made sure he'd never have a future. And all along, I was the bait. The excuse. Her fingers shook. You broke him. And you broke me. Her eyes brimmed with tears, but not for Silas. For Julian. For the man who had endured everything in silence, while she stood by the wrong side. You spent over a decade scheming against me and Julian, Celeste said, her voice low but sharp as a blade. Even that car accident outside the bridal shop, it wasn't just a coincidence, was it? She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. You planned it for Julian. That car was meant for him. But the driver got the wrong target. And you, how clever, you played the hero, throwing yourself in the way to save me. Turning your mistake into a weapon. There was no shaking in her voice now. Just an eerie calm. Even she couldn't help but marvel at Silas's quick mind. Ruthless. Calculating. Deadly. Silas's expression cracked, his voice rising in panic. I didn't mean to, please, listen to me, I just loved you too much, that's all it was. Celeste's face was a mask of disgust. Her voice dropped, glacial. You wanted Julian dead, she said. Then rot in prison. Silas's eyes widened in horror. Celeste, no, no, I love you, I love you. She shoved him again, harder this time. He stumbled back, hands flailing. Get out. You disgust me. For a second, Silas just stood there, his clean, boyish face twitching. Then he laughed, a sharp, crazed bark. You know what? That time I went with you to your prenatal exam, Julian was there too. Celeste froze. The color drained from her face. What did you just say? Silas's eyes glinted with triumph. Yeah. He was there. I saw him. He wasn't at the OB ward like you were, he was in surgery. Urology. Men's health. Celeste's chest rose and fell rapidly. You're lying. Julian would never. Silas cut her off with a sneer. Believe what you want. But ask Lila, the nurse. She'll tell you. You were always too blind to see the truth. You were born rich. I was just the housekeeper's son. If I didn't use tricks, you'd have never looked at me twice. Celeste's hands clenched into fists. That still doesn't justify what you did. Julian was always my everything. You and that monster grandmother of mine, you both deserve to die. Silas coughed hard, his throat dry, his voice cracking. It doesn't matter now. He'll never forgive you. Celeste's eyes flooded with pain. I know, she whispered. He never will. But just as quickly, her gaze turned to steel. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Within minutes, the door burst open. Several bodyguards marched in, escorting a line of filthy beggars. Silas's face contorted in confusion, and then dread. What was she planning now? Celeste stood at the threshold of the decaying warehouse and gave her order with chilling calm. Teach him a lesson. The vagrants moved in, gleefully closing in on Silas. He lay on the ground, disheveled and bruised, but still laughing, madly, defiantly. No matter what you do to me, you'll never divorce me. Eleanor won't let you. She can't. 7 years ago, she even gave birth to my daughter, and that child? She said it's yours to claim. I told her I'd be with you forever, and if she tries to stop me, I'll ruin her. I'll drag every one of her secrets into the light. Celeste's eyes narrowed coldly. Just then, her phone lit up, a message from her attorney. 2 divorce certificates. Official. Stamped. Final. She stepped closer, placed the images right in front of Silas's face. She can't stop me anymore, she said quietly. We're divorced. That broke him. Silas's face twisted in agony as he began to scream, his voice raw and hoarse. No. No. I'm your husband, I am. I always will be. The men ripped at his shirt, dragging him across the concrete floor like a discarded doll. Celeste didn't flinch. She turned on her heel and walked away, her heels echoing down the empty corridor. At the exit, she paused to tell the bodyguards. Take him to the police tomorrow. Include the hit-and-run driver. Submit every piece of evidence. I want Silas prosecuted for attempted murder. Then she left, straight to the hospital. She found Lila waiting, as if she'd known this moment would come. The nurse offered her a file. This is Julian's medical record, she said simply. Celeste took it, her fingers trembling. Her eyes scanned the pages. Her heart seized. Kidney failure. Ongoing treatment. Silent endurance. The room spun. She swayed on her feet, breath caught in her throat, the blood draining from her face. "Is this real?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "Julian, he was really sick. He went through all this treatment, just so we could have a child." Lila adjusted her glasses, her voice calm but firm. "He came to see me at the public hospital. Secretly. Asked me not to tell you. He's endured months of medication, injections, treatments, more than you can imagine. He kept saying, 'Your love was enough.' But a child? That was the one gift he still wanted to give you." Tears spilled down Celeste's cheeks, fast and hot. "How many injections?" 88, Lila answered gently. "He came alone every time." "You never knew." Celeste's whole body shook. How could he endure that? How could he? Lila closed the file, her voice soft. "When the treatment began to work, he was ecstatic. Said he wanted to surprise you on your anniversary. But, the poison you gave him back then, it did irreversible damage. His recovery was hard. And slow." Outside, news of Celeste and Julian had already exploded across Riverfall. Their names filled the headlines. Celeste didn't need Lila to tell her the rest. She already knew. And now, Julian knew everything. He knew about her betrayal. Lila spoke quietly. "After his grandmother passed, once the funeral ended, you left the country. But Grace's will stated that the inheritance was meant for both of you, as husband and wife. Julian needed your marriage certificate to process the estate transfer into both your names." Celeste went ghost pale. 7 years ago, she'd handed Julian a fake marriage certificate. That meant he couldn't claim the Westcott estate in both their names. Grace's generosity. Julian's love. Even that immense inheritance, none of it had been enough to stop her from betraying them both. And then came the final blow. Lila looked her straight in the eye. "Julian will never be able to have children again. To completely sever ties with you, he gave up the chance to ever become a father." Celeste broke down, guttural sobs erupting from her chest. Julian. Julian. But it wasn't just that. She'd gone even further. She'd given Silas Julian's kidney. At the time, she hadn't even flinched. She thought she was repaying a debt to Silas. She believed that Julian's lost kidney didn't matter, he wouldn't be a father anyway. She never imagined that the fragile kidney Julian had held onto so tightly was the very key to their chance at a child. Julian had endured it all for her. Secretly. Silently. Trying to give her the most precious gift, a family. And she had squandered it. Destroyed it. The treatment schedule on the medical report revealed everything. Every appointment Julian had kept. Every sacrifice. Every visit aligned with her office hours, he always went alone, never told her. And one memory slammed back into her. She'd called him during one of those times. His voice had sounded off. "Why do you keep calling me? I'm not feeling well." She had rushed home. And found him curled up on the bed, ghostly pale. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant. He had smiled through the pain. "Stomachache," he told her. "Can you hold me?" She had placed her hand gently over his abdomen, trying to soothe him. He pulled her close and whispered. "It hurts so much." She kissed him, panicked and confused. Julian had never suffered from stomach problems before. She'd called Lila. Followed her instructions. Boiled the herbs. Fed him medicine. Watched over him for days until he finally recovered. She had no idea. None. That what he was enduring was never a stomachache. But the consequence of her betrayal. And his unrelenting love. Celeste's eyes were bloodshot, her chest aching as though something inside had shattered. Why? Why had it taken her this long to realize the truth? That night, their wedding night, she'd forced Julian to drink a potent, cruel poison. She told herself it was about keeping him, binding him to her. But in truth, it had devastated his body. Back then, she thought it was love. Now, she knew it was violence. Silas and Eleanor may have been the architects of the crime. But she had been the executioner. Celeste walked out of the hospital in a daze, like her soul had been ripped from her body. Her phone buzzed. A breaking news alert. A headline flashed. Shocking evidence emerges in the death of Celeste Mariner's parents, all leads point to Eleanor Langley. The blood drained from her face. Her phone rang. The voice of the housekeeper came through, breathless. "Miss, the police just took Madame Eleanor away." Celeste's voice was barely controlled. "Is it true? Was it Eleanor who killed my parents?" The housekeeper's voice trembled. It was just an accident." Celeste exploded. "All these years, she told me it was Julian's family. She said they were the reason. That it was all because of Julian. Is that true or not?" Her voice cracked from fury, from grief. Tears streaked down her face. The housekeeper finally told the story, one buried for over 2 decades. "That day, your parents and the Westcotts had gone on a trip. You were running a high fever, and your parents rushed to take you to the hospital. But their car had no fuel, so they took the Westcott family's spare. Halfway there, your father realized the brakes weren't working. He tried to swerve away from an oncoming truck. The car went off the cliff. Your mother shielded you with her body. She died with your father on impact. You lived." Celeste felt the ground tilt under her feet. She loved Julian, desperately. But she had hated him too. For years, she had suffered in that split. Her love for Julian, and the belief that he had cost her everything. Now the truth stood before her, brutal and unmovable. It had been Eleanor. Eleanor had orchestrated it all. Everything, the lies, the deaths, the pain, had been her design. Celeste stepped into the police interrogation room. Eleanor sat on the other side of the table, calm and collected, her silver hair meticulously pinned, as if she were attending afternoon tea instead of awaiting trial. When she looked up and saw Celeste, she let out a slow, exhausted sigh. "It's all true." Her voice carried no apology. Just bitterness. "I spent my life fighting Grace. I couldn't lose." Celeste's eyes burned with hatred and heartbreak. "So you destroyed me and Julian? So you killed my parents, just to win your little war with her?" Eleanor didn't flinch. No remorse. No regret. "Yes. I never approved of you and that Westcott boy. You insisted on being with him. I would never allow the bloodline of that family to take root in mine. And Silas. His idea was brilliant. It aligned perfectly with my will." Celeste's red lips curved into a cold smile. She had been waiting for this moment. And now, she delivered the final blow. 7 years ago, out of guilt, I secretly transferred all my personal shares to Julian. Every last one. Eleanor's expression twisted. A sliver of panic flickered in her eyes. "Today, those shares have been bought out, by Nora. You forced me to marry Silas," Celeste continued, her voice icy and precise. "You demanded your price, full ownership of Mariner Holdings. Now Mariner Holdings is gone. Destroyed." A deep, sickly groan escaped Eleanor's throat. And then, blood. She coughed violently, a stream of red splattering onto her ivory blouse. What did you say?" she screamed, voice cracking. Celeste's smile deepened. "It was Julian. He's been controlling Mariner Holdings all these years. And you, grandmother. You sold your life's work to your enemy. With your own hands." Eleanor's rage was volcanic. Celeste. Get those shares back. That company is my life's legacy. How dare you give it all away? I should have killed Julian when I had the chance. That boy is a curse. Celeste stood motionless. Now, at last, she saw clearly. All these years, she had mistaken Eleanor's disdain for Julian as mere disapproval of his quiet, reserved nature. But it had never been about Julian himself. It was about history. Old vendettas. The blood feud of a previous generation. Celeste's voice rang through the cold metal walls of the room. Rot in prison. And pay for my parents' lives. Eleanor's laughter burst forth, sharp, wicked, unrepentant. Grace, that wretched woman. She spent her last years alone in a nursing home. You know how she died? She leaned forward, her grin venomous. I had her killed. Celeste's body turned to stone. Her breath caught in her chest. Pain flooded her eyes, raw, bottomless. But she didn't collapse. Not this time. She stood tall. Silent. Unforgiving. Far away in Australia, Julian received a call from the police back home. His hands trembled. His voice cracked as he asked. Grace wasn't sick. She was murdered? On the other end, the officer replied calmly. Madame Westcott was in the late stages of cancer, yes. But according to her doctors, she still had at least 2 years. Eleanor has confessed to her murder. We need a member of the Westcott family to return and assist with legal proceedings. Julian stood frozen. He had never imagined that his grandmother, the woman who raised him, had been killed. His parents, alarmed by the news, stepped into the room. Let us handle it, his father said gently. You've been through enough. But Julian's bloodshot eyes met theirs with quiet defiance. She raised me. I'm going home. He booked the earliest flight back to Riverfall. 2 days later, he was there. But he didn't go to the police station. He went to the cemetery. Alone. A cold wind brushed across the marble stones. He stood before Grace's grave, whispering through gritted teeth. Grandma. I regret it all. Regret loving Celeste. Regret ever meeting her. If I could go back in time, I'd choose a life where she and I never crossed paths. From behind the tall sycamore, Celeste heard every word. Her body shuddered from the inside out. She had been waiting here for 3 days. She knew Julian would come. Because this grave wasn't just a resting place. It was the last truth left between them. She stepped out from the shadows, her eyes glassy with tears. Even though it had only been a month since they last saw each other, it felt like a lifetime. Julian had lost weight. His face was pale, hollow. Despite the mild weather, he wore a heavy coat, wrapped tightly. Celeste's mind echoed with Lila's words. His body is weak. His energy is nearly drained. Let him live in peace. That's all you can do now. Julian turned his head. Their eyes met, across the cold, barren earth. Celeste ran to him. Without hesitation, she threw her arms around him. Tight. Desperate. Like she was holding on to the last breath of life. Julian. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But Julian didn't flinch. He didn't soften. He didn't respond with warmth. His voice was flat. Cold. My parents are waiting for me at the station. Let go of me. Celeste's lips parted. All the words she had rehearsed. All the apologies, the confessions, the pleas. They dissolved in her throat. My grandmother, she killed your grandmother. She'll be punished for it. I swear. Her voice cracked. And if you want me punished too. I'll go turn myself in. Julian stared at her. His gaze, once warm, once full of love, now void. That won't be necessary. He gently removed her arms from around his waist, turned, and walked away. Celeste stood in place, shaking. Her heart begged her legs to follow. But she didn't move. She watched him step into a black car waiting by the road. Watched as it pulled away. And vanished. Just like their future. In the quiet hum of the black car, Julian stared straight ahead. From the passenger seat, his assistant leaned forward and said softly, "Mr. Westcott, there's a vehicle following us." Julian didn't look. He didn't need to. Ignore it. Keep driving. As they returned to the city, Riverfall streets lit up around them. Billboards. Digital screens. Storefront banners. All flashing the same desperate words. "Julian, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me. Julian, I love you. Julian, can we start over?" Julian looked out the window, expressionless. Just 1 month ago, Celeste had gone public with her marriage to Silas, parading it like a trophy. And now, this? Now she was begging him in front of an entire city? The irony was almost theatrical. He looked away. When they reached the hotel, Julian stepped out and found someone waiting. Nora. She stood with perfect composure in her pale blue coat, hair pulled back neatly. Her voice was warm, but crisp. "Celeste came by earlier, but I asked security not to let her in." Julian nodded. "Thank you, Miss Kingsley." Nora smiled. "You can just call me Nora. We were classmates, after all." A faint smile tugged at the corner of Julian's lips. "Then I'll be counting on you these next few days. It's no trouble." Just then, another car pulled up. Celeste. She stepped out. The moment her heels touched the pavement, Nora's entire posture changed, instinctively guarded. Julian glanced over his shoulder at the woman standing behind him. Her face pale. Her eyes swollen from crying. He turned back to Nora and said coldly, "At this point, the Westcott and Mariner families are nothing more than plaintiff and defendant. Miss Mariner. I'll see you in court." The Westcott family had made their position clear. For Eleanor's crimes, nothing short of death would be accepted. Julian's legal counsel, Mark, filed for capital punishment. No deals. No reductions. No delays. Celeste watched as Julian and Nora disappeared through the hotel doors. She remained outside, stopped by security. Her chest tightened, every breath a razor. Suddenly, the memory hit her. That day at the bridal boutique. Julian had stood at the top of the staircase, watching her marry Silas. He had watched it all in silence. And now she stood here, watching him walk away with another woman. Even though it was just Nora. Even though it meant nothing. Her heart tore open. "Julian. I'm sorry. But it was too late." 2 weeks later, the verdict came. 3 lives lost. Guilty on all counts. The sentence, death. Immediate execution. Julian sat alone in the quiet of his hotel suite, the city's skyline stretching endlessly beyond the glass. The news report played silently on the tablet in his hands. Celeste had claimed Eleanor's body from the police morgue. Then she had shown up at the Kingsley family hotel with 999 white tulips, standing beneath the winter sun, praying for his forgiveness. Julian stared at the image. He didn't know why she was doing all this. Didn't know what had happened between her and Silas. But honestly, he didn't care. Whatever love he once had for her, it was gone. And the reasons didn't matter anymore. Celeste had been at the hotel gates for days. Crying. Pleading. Causing a scene. Paparazzi swarmed the entrance. Tourists and onlookers clogged the sidewalks. The name, Julian Westcott, dominated every tabloid and screen in Riverfall. The chaos got so bad that Julian and his parents couldn't even leave the hotel to board their scheduled flight. It was Nora who finally made the suggestion. "There's a helipad on the roof. We can take the chopper out." The three of them turned to Julian for the final say. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, hands in his coat pockets. From up here, he could still see her, Celeste, standing small among the crowd of flashing cameras and flowers. He watched in silence. Then said one word. "Okay." The helicopter's rotors roared to life as it rose from the hotel rooftop. As they pulled away from Riverfall, Julian noticed something in the distance. Another helicopter. Chasing them. Nora's phone buzzed, again and again. She looked at the screen and frowned. "It's Celeste." Julian gave a small nod. "Answer it. Give it to me." She passed the phone to him. He brought it to his ear. "Julian." Celeste's voice was frantic. "Turn the helicopter around. I want to see you. Just give me a few minutes. Please, stop running." Julian said calmly. "Celeste." A sob burst through the line. "Julian, please don't leave me. I've divorced Silas. It was all lies, him and Eleanor, they tricked me. You have to believe me. Just see me one last time." Julian's eyes turned red, but his voice remained quiet. "I don't care what happened with Silas. I really don't. All I can say is, take care of yourself. Stop chasing me." "No, Julian. I need you. I'll explain everything, I'll tell you the whole truth, just don't leave me like this." Julian closed his eyes. Then said the final words she would ever hear from him. "The moment I stopped loving you, none of your explanations mattered anymore. This is where it ends. Julian, I love you." The scream pierced through the phone. Julian didn't flinch. He hung up. Behind them, the second helicopter gradually slowed. And finally turned back. As the helicopter soared farther from Riverfall, Nora sat quietly beside Julian, stealing glances at the man whose entire world had just imploded. He looked broken, utterly still, eyes distant, pain etched into every line of his face. She wanted to reach out and hold him. But somehow, she knew she couldn't. Instead, after a long silence, she softly said, "You deserve to know what happened these past few weeks." Julian didn't look at her. Nora continued, her voice calm, gentle. "Silas, he was never just a friend. He was Eleanor's man. Celeste found out. She divorced him. Then she hired a bunch of vagrants to humiliate him in public." Julian finally turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "You didn't have to tell me," he said, quietly. Nora gave a small smile. "Maybe not. But I don't want you carrying this in your heart forever. Celeste betrayed you because Eleanor lied to her. She told Celeste it was Silas who had been donating blood to keep her alive all those years." Julian let out a slow breath. Then, wordlessly, he rolled up his shirt sleeve. Though the needle marks had long faded, the pain hadn't. Tiny, almost invisible scars lined the soft skin near his veins, each one a silent testament. His eyes burned red. "You know what I feared the most all these years," he whispered. "That Celeste might die. And now," he looked out the window, voice hollow. "Now I don't fear it at all. What kind of love must it have been, for a man to give up his own life force just to keep someone breathing? And what kind of heartbreak does it take, for that same man to erase her from his soul? This was the end. No more love. No more hatred. Just silence. Goodbye, Celeste. May the rest of your life pass without me, unseen, unremembered. Down below, Celeste watched his helicopter disappear into the clouds. Her own chopper sat quietly on the grass behind her, its engine already cooled. She didn't move. Not for a long time. Her eyes, once so bright, now glassy with pain, stared into the distance where Julian had vanished. His last words still echoed in her ears. When I stopped loving you, no explanation mattered anymore. There had been no yelling. No blame. Not even anger. Just silence. And that silence broke her. His greatest revenge wasn't rage. It was absence. Julian had disappeared from her world completely, without even slamming the door behind him. Celeste collapsed hours later. Her body finally gave out, just as her heart had. She was rushed to the hospital, where doctors fought for 3 days and nights to keep her alive. Only one person came to visit her. Hazel. She sat by the bed, held her hand, and whispered. Celeste, the bridal boutique where you married Silas? It belonged to Julian. Celeste's eyes widened in horror. The truth stabbed deeper than any betrayal. She yanked out the 4 from her hand, blood trailing behind her as she stumbled out of bed. Tears blurred her vision as she screamed. She had to see it with her own eyes. She had to go back to that place. To the store. To the altar. To the one man who had once given her everything, and now left her with nothing. When Celeste stumbled into the bridal boutique, the owner looked genuinely surprised. Ms. Mariner? Celeste's voice cracked as she scanned the familiar space. This place, it belonged to Julian, didn't it? The owner gave her a small nod, then gently corrected her. It used to. Mr. Westcott sold it to me recently. He disappeared into the backroom, then returned with a thick binder, leather-bound and carefully preserved. You might want to see this, he said, handing it over. Every gown in here. Julian designed them. For you. Celeste's hands trembled as she opened to the first page. A white gown, breathtaking in its softness and whimsy, stared back at her. Beside the sketch, Julian had written a note in his own hand. She's like a jellyfish, adorable, dangerous. Said she liked my dimples when I smiled. So I wanted to make her a dress like a jellyfish, translucent, dreamy, full of motion. The dress was sheer, layered, fluid. Like water, like memory. She turned the pages, one by one. Each gown came with a caption. A slice of life. A heartbeat preserved. She pissed me off today. Said I was too quiet, boring, wouldn't eat the damn chocolate. I'll make her a black dress, made of chocolate, so sweet it kills her. She said my skin was too pale, bruises too easy. Told me not to let anyone see my collarbone, she's insanely possessive. So today's dress is lace. Full body. Head to toe. And then, she found it. The gown she had worn to marry Silas. A soft blush-colored creation, speckled with tiny crystals that sparkled like morning dew. Next to the sketch was a line written in Julian's looping script. First love. The day she kissed me. She just had a strawberry candy. I wanted to remember that. The sequins were shaped like tiny strawberry seeds. The silhouette was youthful. Innocent. Heartbreaking. Celeste couldn't hold it in anymore. Her tears spilled, dripping onto the paper as if trying to erase the past she never truly saw. Julian had been loving her this whole time. Quietly. Faithfully. With fabric, thread, and ink. She sat there for hours, morning to noon, noon to dusk, dusk to midnight. She didn't move. The next day, she bought the boutique. Every gown Julian had ever drawn, she would protect. Not because she deserved to. But because she owed him that much. This place, it had once been a girl's dream. But really, it was Julian's dream, for her. Julian, I'm sorry. I was blind. I didn't see you. And then it hit her. Silas knew. He always knew the store belonged to Julian. That's why he insisted on this boutique for the wedding. He'd told her it was small, affordable, a niche designer. Said it wasn't fancy, but charming. She'd thought he was being frugal, sweet even. She'd wanted to save him money. God, how she'd failed. She had unknowingly dragged Julian into his own store, wearing a gown he designed, marrying someone else. You're good at hitting where it hurts. That's what Julian had once told Silas. And now, she understood. Every step of her wedding day had been a dagger to Julian's chest. And Silas. He'd guided her hand the entire time. He had turned her into the knife. She had destroyed Silas completely. Brought him down, dragged him through the courts, and sent him straight to prison. But none of it mattered. If Julian would just come back, to hate her, to punish her, she would take it all. Every wound. Every sentence. Gladly. For 5 long years, Celeste searched the world for him. She scoured every corner of Australia, following every rumor, every dead-end trail. And then one morning, she saw it. Front page. Riverfall. Westcott Group CEO to wed Kingsley Group heiress. Wedding to be held at Kingsley's 7-star hotel this weekend. Her breath left her. So, he was never lost. While she flew from city to city chasing ghosts, Julian had been home the entire time. With Nora Kingsley. She caught the first flight back to Riverfall. Didn't sleep. Didn't eat. The next day, she stormed into the Kingsley Group headquarters. Straight to the top floor. Straight to the CEO's office. And there he was. Julian. He looked up from his seat calmly, not the least bit surprised. Her eyes welled with tears as she ran across the room, throwing herself into his arms. She was trembling, body and soul. Julian. Julian. I finally found you. He didn't move. Didn't speak. She clung to him as if she could hold back time, pain, and fate all at once. Julian already knew she'd come. He knew the moment they made their wedding announcement public, Celeste would follow. This is my wife's office, he said coolly. Celeste froze. Stiff. Cold. Numb. No, she snapped. I won't let you marry her. You can't belong to anyone else. You're mine, Julian. I've searched for you for so long. Julian looked at her, his expression unreadable. Celeste. I was only abroad for a year. The last 4 years, I've been right here. In Riverfall. His voice was steady. Flat. No anger. No warmth. Just distance. Celeste's voice cracked as she tried to close the space between them. It doesn't matter now. I'm here. I'll stay by your side, always. I know you're angry, but Julian, we've been together for 27 years. Julian stared at her. She was thinner now. Paler. Hollowed out by time and guilt. She wasn't the same woman from 5 years ago. But then, maybe neither was he. Julian couldn't tell if her desperation came from losing Mariner Holdings, or losing him. Celeste's voice dropped to a whisper. Julian. I'm begging you. Marry me again. Her lips trembled as tears ran freely. I didn't know. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't know it was you who had been saving me all those years. I swear, I didn't. 5 years later, standing before the woman he once gave his life for, Julian felt calm. Too calm. He had expected fury. He found indifference. Nora had brought peace into his life. Their relationship wasn't a grand love story, but it was quiet, supportive, mutual. And maybe, after everything Celeste had burned through, that was all he'd ever wanted. Maybe he had simply run out of love to give. Julian gently reached out, his fingers brushing through Celeste's hair. Among the rich chestnut strands, a few threads of silver caught the light. He paused, gaze soft but unyielding. "I won't be the one to save you anymore," he said quietly. "Take care of yourself, Celeste. And stop looking for me. Nora and I will spend the rest of our lives together." Then, just as gently as he had reached for her, he let go. He turned. Nora was standing at the door. Julian walked to her without hesitation, slipping his arm around her waist. And just like that, Celeste watched the man she'd loved for 27 years hold another woman. Her tulips, the symbol of all her apologies, all her longing, had bloomed for someone else. Her heart broke. In her mind, a memory flashed. Freshman year of college. Nora Kingsley had written Julian a love letter. Celeste had found it. Confronted her. Beat her down in a jealous rage. But Nora had simply laughed, cool, proud, unshaken. "I'll keep writing him love letters until you marry him," she'd said. "Until then, I have every right to love him too." And Celeste had married him. Nora had gone abroad after that. But now, here she was. Back in Riverfall. Wearing Celeste's dreams. Wrapped in Julian's arms. Celeste's eyes shimmered with tears. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I'm not giving up on you." But the wedding went on. Julian and Nora stood together at the altar, he in a tailored black suit, she radiant in a pure white gown. The entire upper circle of Riverfall's elite was in attendance. Many of them had once attended Julian's first wedding too. They remembered the lavish affair. They remembered Celeste. Now they watched as a different woman stood beside him. The ceremony began. But just as the opening notes of the wedding march played, the giant screen behind the altar lit up. One by one, letters appeared. Love letters. 999 of them. Gasps echoed through the hall. On screen, the guests saw the final letter. Its date, 1 year ago. "Julian, you finally said yes to my proposal. I'm so happy I get to marry you. I'll give you the kind of love you've always deserved." Then, the screen began scrolling backward, letter by letter, all the way to the very first one. Its date, 17 years ago. Julian's breath caught. A voice read the letter aloud. "This is a letter I never had the courage to send. Julian, I think I might like you. But you already have Celeste. The way you look at her, there's light in your eyes. So this will stay a secret. Just a silent little crush." Julian's eyes reddened. 17 years. Nora had loved him in silence for 17 years. He had never known. Julian turned his gaze toward Nora, his eyes dark and unreadable. But just then, a hotel security guard burst into the room, panting. "Sir, it's Mariner. She's on the rooftop. Says she's going to jump." Julian's hand trembled. He thought he'd made everything clear the night before. Nora touched his arm. "Julian, let me handle this." He shook his head. "Nora, the wedding will go on. Just give me 20 minutes. Is that okay?" Nora gave a soft smile. "If something happens to her, I know it'll haunt you. I'll wait." His eyes filled with red. He didn't know if he'd ever truly love Nora the way she deserved. But he was willing to spend the rest of his life learning how. He reached the rooftop. And froze. Celeste was standing near the edge, wearing that dress. The white gown from their wedding day. The one she'd worn 13 years ago. Even now, after all this time, he recognized it instantly. "Is this what you want, Celeste?" he called out. She turned, eyes red, cheeks soaked with tears. One step forward, and she'd fall 78 stories to her death. "Julian, I can't breathe without you. I can't live even one more day." His voice was low, almost mocking. "Funny. I felt the same way when I saw you kissing Silas at the airport. Thought I was gonna die too." Celeste sobbed, reaching toward him. "Please forgive me. I searched the world for you for 5 years. If I'd known you were here in Riverfall." He cut her off. "Did I ever take you back to the place where we used to celebrate our anniversary?" She paused. "That restaurant. It was in this very hotel." She'd chosen it once, deliberately, to make sure Nora saw them together, happy, married. But Julian had grown to love it. "I left your last anniversary gift there," he said. His tone softened just slightly. 5 years ago. It's still waiting for you." Then his voice sharpened again. "Nora's downstairs. I'm getting married. You and we're even now. No debts, no promises. Let's not carry each other anymore." He turned. And walked away. Just like that day at the hospital. Even if Celeste died right then and there, Julian wouldn't look back. Celeste burst into the restaurant, desperation all over her face. "Where is it?" she asked breathlessly. "The gift Julian left for me, 5 years ago." The manager nodded solemnly and returned moments later with a sealed, frost-covered box. "Mr. Westcott said, if you ever came back, we were to give you this." Her fingers trembled as she peeled away the seal. She recognized the hospital insignia instantly. Her heart dropped. She opened it. Inside, what remained of a human organ, frozen and preserved in a pool of darkened blood. It was a kidney. Julian's kidney. Celeste collapsed into a fit of silent sobs, shaking violently. It all became clear. This was why Julian would never, could never, forgive her. Between them stood a child, a betrayal, and a part of his own body she never knew he'd given. That gift was more than an apology. It was an ending. Meanwhile, the wedding continued. Nora stood beside Julian, her hand in his. The crowd at Riverfall still murmured in awe, 999 love letters projected onto the screen behind them, a love story that spanned 17 years, now shared with the world. And as they exchanged vows, as their fingers intertwined, a quiet promise was made. Later that night, on their wedding bed, Julian received the news. Mariner Holdings has been dissolved. Celeste donated every remaining asset to the Kingsley Children's Foundation. Julian glanced at Nora. She leaned in, pressing a kiss to his brow. "Honey." He smiled faintly. "No matter how tightly Celeste clings to the past," she whispered, "I'll never let go of your hand." He touched her cheek. "Then I'll learn how to love you." That night, Celeste leapt from the rooftop of her company's headquarters. The next morning, all of Riverfall woke to headlines of her death. Julian refused to look at the photos. He couldn't bear the gore. It was Nora who quietly arranged her funeral. But only one detail made its way into the papers, something almost no one understood. At the moment of her death, Celeste had clutched a single tulip. A white one, tinged with red. Julian couldn't stop the memory from coming back. 15 years old. She'd leaned in, her eyes bright, her cheeks flushed. "Julian," she'd asked, "what kind of flower do you think you are?" He'd looked up from his book, startled by her closeness, and said nothing. She smiled and pointed to the small white tulip she had potted on her desk. "You're a white tulip. Quiet. Mysterious. The kind that only I could take care of." Julian turned his gaze to the vase by the window. Nora had placed fresh tulips there that morning. His vision blurred with tears.